on today's episode of Pull Start Stables 6L80 to 10L80 swap. We're going to be working on this cooler block here, which actually has a thermostat inside of it. And why we would want to warm up a temperature of a transmission and maintain a high temperature of a transmission blows my mind. There's nothing in a transmission that wants to be hot, ever. All we want to do is cool a transmission. So we have that massive hydraulic cooler that we're going to stick up behind the grill. We're going to remove those shutters so we have 100% airflow all the time. And we're going to block off this thermostat so it can, just cool. We can keep this transmission cold. We can keep it healthy, alive a long time. And with all the power that this engine's making, we want a cool and healthy, tight transmission. So now that this is out, let's go to the bench. Welcome to this chaotic land of workbench. What we're gonna do here is pop that clip out. Now that we got it out of the groove, we'll just work it around, work it out. Okay. Yeah, look at that. Why would we do that? Silly stuff. I believe that's it. So we have a series of machine passages in there, and right now we're going to see what we can do about tapping these two outlets, or an inlet and an outlet. We're going to tap them to a pipe thread so I can run -6 AN transmission lines, which is like a 3/8 inch inside diameter. And once we get those tapped, then I might even put this in the Berryman carb dip and see if I can clean up the majority of that filth right there without destroying it. I want to get this thing super clean. I want to get rid of all that debris that's in there and make it a good clean passage. Now originally I was thinking maybe I could do something to block off these passages and make it so it does not ever bypass and just flows straight through. Check this out. This came to me from Amazon. I believe it was just less than $18 delivered. And this thing, all I have to do is lube those O-rings with a little bit of transmission fluid and pop them back in, and it will essentially block off our thermostatic area. And so it plugs, so our flow has to go from here to here, from here to here. It never has the chance to circulate back and forth. We're going to put that back in the case, close it, just keep it a little cleaner for now, and get to work tapping those holes. My hole size here for an 1/8 inch tap is supposed to be about 330 thousandths. And these ones are 381, 382. So that's pretty big. I might need my 1/4 inch tap. But what I'm gonna do is just use some tap magic and see what the threads look like on these holes. If they're not full cut threads, I'm gonna end up drilling this out to run a 1/4 inch tap instead of my 1/8 inch tap. Unfortunately, I don't think I got my 1/4 inch tap fittings in the mail, so we'll have to sort that out. Here goes nothing. Yeah, it kind of just looks like I'm scratching the surface. I'm not actually making any real cuts. And because of the shoulder in this, yeah, I won't be able to use this 1/8 inch. Good to know. Since I am waiting on that valve block to get cleaned up in the carb dip, I'm running a gallon of Berryman carb dip on the bench for my small engine stuff. Since it's in there, I am just doing a little stuff underneath. I've got the transfer case all plugged in, all the harness stuff plugged in. I popped that transmission mount back off and made sure all 6 of my transfer case nuts were good and tight. The starter is reinstalled along with that little plastic thing there. I managed to throw another zip tie between the harnesses and the fuel lines. And I also installed the shifter. Now, I did no modifications to that shifter. I'm going to just kind of see how things go, you know? We talked about dipsticks earlier in this series, and I think it's kind of cool that there's a dipstick for a car and a dipstick for a truck, but they look like they're at the same level. So I don't know how that works, but I'm going to work on the truck one when it comes time. I also did myself a favor and pulled that 24mm socket and 1/2 inch ratchet off the crank. That would have been fun to fire up and bang along some of these things. A little bit of a necessary evil. We've got the grill and front bumper cover removed. Now we can get to removing this shutter assembly and disconnecting the wiring harness for that, and see what we got for room for that cooler. Well, I guess I'm glad I found this now, but I'm a little bit bummed. I thought that was just damage to the cooling fins, but you can see that's a clear leak. Oh, that's a bummer. So unfortunately, my monster hydraulic cooler is a no-go. Well, it's been a couple of days, and my new 1/4 inch pipe AN fittings came, and I got about 2 turns in, and they say that 4 turns is the appropriate amount. So now that I have that taken care of, I know that I need to go in 2 more turns from my stop. Now I can get this thing cleaned back up, and I do believe I'm going to put some Loctite on these threads when I put them in instead of pipe dope, because I don't plan on them ever coming apart. So I'm going to be using the ultra low viscosity, I guess it doesn't even say Dexron, but it's supposed to be Dex, ULV, whatever, Valvoline. Anyway, I'll be using that for this transmission. So I'm just going to put a little bit on these O-rings. This is ready for assembly. And just because it's on my fingers, I'm going to do that. Drop that in. I don't know if I'm supposed to use a little emphasis. I guess that's what I'm going to do, though. Use a little bit of a soft rubber hammer and pop that in. Apparently I need a little bit more persuasion. That's interesting. Well, that ain't going nowhere. Dang. Push it in a little bit further so we can get our C-clip in. Doesn't really need a C-clip. Holy cow. This does have to pop back out. I don't believe it did. I might need to compress this with the C-clip in place. I don't think I'll need to. There. Good deal. Now this is assembled. This Loctite is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to just, let's see, I can install it and my Loctite will be down. It won't get into the inside of this thing. Sweet. Now I could begin running lines, but I don't have my cooler yet and it's on the way. I'm going to drop the pan of the transmission and drain any fluid that's remaining in there, put my new filter in, wipe things down, you know, just do a little inspection. I'm excited. Note to self, or note to future self, or note to you, this is not necessarily a drain plug. It's got a tube on it about, I don't know, 1.5 inches tall. So it goes basically just above the pan depth. So when you undo all these 16 bolts and expect to be able to drop this without a mess you may find. It was pouring everywhere. Every bit of it was leaking out, and it was in heavy fashion. I was able to capture the majority of what was coming out, I think, but it still made a big mess. So plan on not using that as a drain plug. Plan on still using your back corners as a drain point, not a drain plug. Well, it's not quite as massive as that one, but it is quite thick. It's a 30 row. It's brand new, clean. So, hey, we got our new cooler. Stay. All right, the drive shafts are in, the exhaust is in. I got a new donut gasket for the passenger side because I couldn't find the old one. Driver's side was in good shape. I gotta get the muffler slid onto the mid pipe, clamp it in place. Then I can get this transmission cross member right here installed for good. I'm making big progress today while it's up in the air. It actually looks like a complete vehicle, which is really cool from underneath. Here's where we're at. We need to mount that new cooler and fill it up. We need to finish getting the old lines out. I've got them cut off mostly at the radiator, and need to install the new lines, install the front bumper, get the fluid filled up through that little port on the side, mount my TCM and the little powertrain swap solutions module, and tie off any loose wires that are under the hood. I am so close to firing this thing up. Well, my AN fitting kit has some 180s, and some 45s. And the 90s are down on the transmission, so I'm gonna have to see if I can find some new fittings, maybe at my father-in-law's house in the race shop. And then I can rivet this down to this plastic so it's not super rigid, but you know, in place, and snug some stuff up, and a little bit of black paint. It's gonna be great. A little paint makes about anything look a little bit better, so I need to clean up my metal shavings, and maybe I'll just throw a little bit of paint down there as well. I know most of this is going to be covered by the grill and the bumper, but remember I took that big shutter system out, so you know, that's getting cleaned up. I've begun running my AN lines, and I'm basically using the stock location on this side of the engine, the passenger side, because of the differential on this side. And I've also got the steering box and all that stuff over here. So nice easy pathway. I drilled a little hole in that tab right there on the oil pan so I could keep some separation, but also zip tie them nice and tight. And I'm using the spark plug wire method of zip ties, having one in the middle, keeping that air gap so my hot and my cooled lines are not touching. And I've run my lines right up to the block here. I am getting so excited. This is my first time ever assembling AN fittings, believe it or not. And happy Friday the 13th. I have had these cutters in my electrical toolbox for a number of years, and I like to bring it with me to the junkyard because if I'm pulling something, I can just quick cut an entire harness. Well, come to find out, these are pretty much the same as what they use to cut this braided steel. So I'm going to just give it a shot here. I've got my masking tape. I've got my line marked. Let's see how this works. Ugh, I got a little bit of fraying. I also have a little bit of extra if I need to. Man, I kind of was hoping I wouldn't have to use a death wheel because I don't want to have all that debris in my line. But it could be that these things are so dull, used up. Nope, it looks like I might have to use a death wheel. Now they say that a fluid and filter change on a 10L80 is about 8 quarts and total system capacity is 12 quarts. So because of the fact that I'm doing new lines and a new cooler, I got 12 quarts just to have enough. I've gone through about 4 quarts filling the transmission pan. It started overflowing out of my fill plug, and I assumed I might be able to get 4 to 6 quarts in this pan. But what I'm going to do is continue to complete my line set. I just blew these out with some brake clean and compressed air both ways. Now I can finish my connections up here at the cooler. I'm also going to pre-fill the cooler. And maybe today, maybe Friday the 13th, we're gonna hear some noise. Once I fire it up, it'll probably be a little bit off the ground, and I will run it through all of the gears, check the fluid again. So I have my AN fitting apart. This ended up being a 19mm slip fit, and this is threaded on the inside, and it happens to be a left-hand thread on this particular model. Maybe they're all that way, I don't know. But I'm gonna just use my ratchet and thread it on. Ugh, me don't like it. I don't really feel like this is going to be any different, but I was able to use the red fittings on the bottom, so I'll use the red ones on top. See if that helps. I do realize that AN fittings should have aluminum wrenches so they don't mar up. At this point, I want it to work, and I don't think I'm going to tear it up too bad. So it'll look just fine behind that grill. Yeah. Check that out. A little zippy tie action. It's going to be just fine. Yeah, I like it. For the sake of potential leaks and inspection and all that, I'm going to just plan on firing this up without the grill and bumper. It's a big enough job to get it off. I don't feel like putting it on and taking it off again. That's kind of saying I don't trust my own work. That's okay. It doesn't mean I necessarily trust all my materials. According to my list, if I just hook that battery up right there, I can make some noise. Believe it or not, I'm a bit excited. I'm not nervous, I'm excited. That's promising. So awesome to hear Tish just run again. Morticia is one mean machine. It's my wife's daily driver, and we love her. I'm going to get it back up in the air and check the fluid level, and then maybe set it on the ground and actually see how it moves. Maybe just up and down the driveway until I get the bumper on. Well, there we have it. Morticia is an absolute animal now. And it just blows my mind, the difference. You know, those first 3 gears being lower than the first gear alone of the 6-speed. It just, oh, it's so crisp, so quick. The power band is just amazing. I'm gonna finish putting this thing back together. There's really nothing left to see. I don't know what to say. The 10-speed is awesome. I'm so glad that I made that decision to push forward with this rather than a stock rebuild. Coming out ahead on money is a big enough incentive as it is. And hopefully with this video series, you will be able to complete this in your own garage or driveway, even if that's the case. I'm very fortunate to have the lift, but it's not necessary. People have been wrenching on engines, transmissions, transfer cases, and driveways for years, and I've done it myself too. So don't let that be, you know, any burden. Don't let that be a reason that you can't do this yourself. I did it, and I think you can too. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.